All right, so let's go ahead and go to the inside of our foldable. And for these first few problems, we're going to either be finding the sum or the difference. Of course, a sum is when you add, and difference is if you are subtracting. And when we do this, we want to remember that we're going to use standard form that we just talked about whenever we write our final answers. Answers always need to be in standard form. Because whenever you're adding, and how do we know we're adding? We just have an add symbol right here. Our like terms are going to be terms that have the exact same variable and exponent on them. So in order to add two polynomials together, we just combine the like terms. So I see that I have a 4 or negative 4x squared here, and that's my biggest exponent is a squared. The other squared term is a negative x squared. So I want to combine those two into a negative 4, and a negative 1 is going to give me a negative 5x squared. Next, I have a negative 6x here. If you don't have different colors that you're working with, feel free to maybe underline instead of the orange, or box instead of the orange. Put a double underline under something, just something to distinguish that those two terms, if there are 2 or 3 like terms, that those are put together. I also have a positive 7x. So again, the coefficients are different, a negative 6 and a 7, but the variable's the same, an x, just a plain x, or an x to the first power. So negative 6 plus 7 is going to give me a 1. And we don't normally write the 1, so I'm just going to say plus x for that piece. Next, our constants is the only thing we have left. So I have a positive 18 and a positive 8. That's going to give me a positive 26. And so this is my final answer. Notice that it is in standard form. I have my biggest exponent first, my 2. I don't have an exponent on this x, but it has an implied 1 here. And then this one just doesn't even have an x. So they are in decreasing order. Next, we'll look at a couple of subtraction problems. I know that it's subtraction because I see a subtraction or a minus symbol right here in between the two sets of parentheses. This means that I have an extra step to do before I can just jump in and combine like terms. And that extra step is that I need to take care of that negative sign by distributing the negative to all of the terms. So I'm going to take the negative, or it's like multiplying by a negative 1 for all of the terms. The shortcut method to this that you guys have probably learned in Algebra 1 is basically we're just going to go in and change all the signs, because anytime you multiply by a negative 1, it changes the signs. So we can say that we are distributing the negative, which in effect just changes all the signs. So I'm going to rewrite this with that done, and then start combining like terms. So my very first polynomial, the first set of parentheses, nothing is going to change. There wasn't anything out in front here that needed to be distributed. So it doesn't have any changes to it. I'm just going to simply eliminate the parentheses as I go along here. Now this is where I need to change things up. Because of the negative out here in front, I'm going to be multiplying that negative times the negative 11. That's going to give me a positive 11x to the 4th, continuing on a negative 5x squared, positive 7x, and negative 13. And now I'm ready to go ahead and combine my like terms. I see that my biggest term that I have is a 4th power. I have an x to the 4th here. I also have an x to the 4th here. Notice that I have a positive 11 and a negative 11. Those are simply going to cancel out because they're opposites of each other. 11 minus 11 is 0. Let's move to the x to the 3rd next. I have a negative x to the 3rd, and looking across, I don't have any other x to the 3rd. So I'm just going to write that as my first term of my final answer. And then I'm going to move on to x squareds. So I see that I have a negative 3x squared, and a negative 5x squared. So that's going to give me a negative 8x squared. Then I have 10x here, positive 10x, and a positive 7x plus 17x. And finally, I'm going to combine those constant terms. I have a negative 2 and a negative 13. That's going to give me a negative 15. And so this is my final answer. Again, confirm that you've got everything in standard form. I have a 3, a 2, a 1 implied, and then none. Now I'd like you to pause the video and try number 3. It's another subtraction problem. I know that because there is a subtraction symbol here. Come back and see how you did. All right, let's see how you did. So the first thing that you should have looked at is distributing this negative sign to all 3 terms. And so when you do that, you're going to rewrite the first polynomial, 2x squared plus 3x and then minus 1, and then distribute that negative. So I have a negative times x squared. I have a negative times a negative 2x, so that's going to give me a positive 2x with the 2 negatives, and then another 2 negatives and a 4, so that's a positive 4. Then I combine like terms to get a final answer of x squared plus 5x plus 3.